Hey guys, so many of you have heard by now that Min Hee-jin, the creator of New Jeans, won her injunction on Thursday afternoon Korea time. People are wondering, what does that mean? A lot of the bunnies are saying, yeah, she absolutely won and this totally proves that HYBE was wrong. That is absolutely not the case. Her little injunction was essentially like if you're at the restaurant, you're arguing over whether you should have some extra ranch on the side, and it came out of nowhere, and mom was saying like, no, we're not having ranch. You're not putting it on your ice cream. And in the end, father said, let her have her ranch however she wants to do it. Well, already on Friday morning in Korea, Ador met. They had their board meeting. So essentially the injunction meant that by the direction of the court, HYBE was not able, or Ador essentially, the Ador board of directors was not able to fire her, but they certainly fired her deputies and they reconfigured the board where now she is outnumbered. We're gonna go into what kind of ramifications this devil injunction has. So the express details of this case are this. On Thursday afternoon, Min Hee-jin won her injunction. On Friday morning, Ador still met and HYBE just fired her minions who were basically on her board. The board she stacked, she manipulated before so that everybody on the board would do what she says. Now we got the opposite situation where HYBE not only replaced her two minions on the board, because the board was only 3 people, honey, okay? 3 people. And she was the main person on the board. Now the board is going to consist of her, so she'll have her side, and then there are 3 board members instead of 2 besides her, and they're all on HYBE's team. So that basically means she's going to be outnumbered in anything 3-1. And as I'm recording right now, she's starting her new press conference. Probably it was her victory lap, but she didn't realize that she has outplayed her hand. Okay, now, if you're wondering about how the heck did the judge rule in favor of her injunction, we have to remember that there is essentially a legal question that the judge is focused on. Let me try to give you the kind words to the judge, and then I'll give you the shady words to the judge. So, in the court of law, when there is a petition or an injunction, it's very, very specific, meant to answer a very specific legal question. And the evidence that gets thrown at it, yes, covers a wider swath of what that actual legal question is. So that's why it gets confusing sometimes when you're like, well, you know, when we're looking at all of the evidence on the Kakao Talk messages, her embezzlement, all of that stuff should basically mean that she would be fired. But the actual legal question, because you know the judges, they're like, it's like, okay, now here's shaky time. The judges, if you can kind of consider it, are in the mindset of like when there's a case coming up to them, it's almost like they're back in school. Like this is an exam for them to get a super A on. And the question was centered around her actual contract, her employment contract. And HYBE was trying to argue that there was breach of trust, but they wrote it into the employment contract that breach of trust would have to require criminality, and that is actually not for HYBE to decide. That is for the police, and then if the police hand it over to the prosecution. So HYBE in general actually doesn't have the jurisdiction to officially determine whether there's criminality, but they could definitely put the evidence that they have towards it. Now the judge said that, okay, we're looking at whether she had criminality against Ador, not HYBE. So a lot of you, I'm so glad that this case has sharpened everybody's general knowledge of the legal system and actually going to court, are all really smart to point out that the judge's statement said that yes, they do see how she betrayed HYBE, that she acted against HYBE's interests, but she didn't act against Ador's interest. And so therefore they said that there's not enough evidence so far for a breach of trust for Min Hee-jin in her role to take care of Ador. Now, I'm going to tell you why I think that that is actually even very flawed, even if you do consider it in that case. So essentially, she was able to get the judge to block HYBE's 80% voting power on the board to fire her, and they set a fine or a penalty of 200, so that's about $15 million. So in some ways they negotiated and they compromised on actually the floor price. If you want to get her out now, if it's like eBay buy now, it's $15 million. Now, the reason why I think it's still extremely flawed is that this judge said that there was no damage to Ador. However, if you are damaging HYBE, which owns 80% of Ador, and you are damaging HYBE, how are you not damaging Ador? So the analogy I came up with was as if she poisoned the water supply in the HYBE building, and the judge was like, yeah, that's pretty bad, but she didn't damage Ador's drinking water system, except, honey, they use the faucets there. So it's as if you're poisoning your own house's water supply and you drink out of it, but the judge is saying like, well, they might have poisoned the house's water supply, but they didn't poison Ador's room. Ador's one room. So they didn't poison that. So that's why I think it's very flawed. And again, it brings up how capricious the legal system is in general, and especially in Korea. And I've said this before, that one lawyer told me that aside from DUIs, mainly almost every legal argument can go either way, depending if the judge, if the judge was forced to rule in HYBE's favor, they would have totally taken, I think, a different tact. There are two basically major flaws with the legal system. Is number one, it's designed to now prevent people from being falsely accused. So it's a lot harder. The bar is kind of high to convict someone in some cases, but in general, that seems to now favor the criminals who know how to wiggle their way out of it. And secondly, the world of the law and your lawsuit is completely on paper. That is the world that they are considering, not the real world outside. So whoever can craft the world on paper in their favor is going to win. And sometimes I think of it as like, if you're trying to recreate Earth on like a spaceship, and you didn't bring, let's say you like green tea, but they only brought black tea. And you're just like, well, there is a thing called green tea. And they're like, sorry, well, in our world, we only have black tea. So what she was able to do was, through her press conference and claiming on paper that she supposedly had the parental support, the Eugene's Members Alliance, the 10,000 bunny droppings, and all of her other shenanigans, on paper, she basically said that she was essentially Ador. Ador is her. So getting rid of her would essentially damage Ador, and that there was not enough evidence for her to be seen as breach of duty. However, the judge still acknowledged that her breach of duty plans were certainly there. But to the extent of, to the judge, whether she acted upon it or not, she was able to convince the judge of her side. And the other complication of going to court, like I said, it's as if it's a legal exam for the judges to score an A on. It's not really about justice. It's not really about which side is right or not, or what kind of impact maybe that it would have on the world. It's essentially like, well, the judge has to answer this legal question that's presented in front of them as best that makes them look the best, and it has to be on the exam. So on the exam was essentially, are her contract terms violated? And she basically was able to say no, because there's no criminality yet. So HYBE is actually being punished for preventing a major loss to the entire group and the health of the group. Also, the reason why it gets a little bit more complicated is that the judges are almost answering it as if it looks like a multiple choice test where there's only one right answer. And that couldn't be further from the truth. First of all, they write an essay for the answer. But if you do see it, it feels like a multiple choice test, and okay, that must be the only correct answer, but it hardly is. But the problem is that they are actually making up the multiple choice answers. The lawyers are definitely putting in their impact of, or their basically arguments of what should be A, B, C, D, or E. But the judge gets to decide what the answers are, what qualifies as an answer, so what evidence qualifies, and whether that is enough to be seen as the right answer. So like when you've taken multiple choice tests and you're like, I don't know if any of these really seem to be the right answer, and the teacher's always saying like, oh, well, choose the answer that seems to fit the best or be the most correct. Now in this case though, the judges are deciding what's A, B, C, D, or E, and then they're scoring their own exams. So, you see, now how does this affect the vice presidents that were Min Hee-jin's henchmen and her partners in this whole saga? Min Hee-jin's side, her lawyers, they mixed in their opinions and non-factual statements with some summaries of what happened in court. And they basically posited saying that, oh, well, if Min Hee-jin can't get fired, you can't fire the deputies, especially have them lose their seats from the board. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Again, like I said, the legal question, the legal exam, what was on the test for the judges only had to do with Min Hee-jin's contract. It had nothing to do with the vice presidents. Now, the vice presidents, they could have filed their own injunctions to the court, but I think they knew very quickly that the evidence against them would be much more damning because they were the ones who actually had to get their hands dirty and do most of the dirty work. Also, they don't have a contract clause where it has to be criminality level for them to have breach of trust, or even if breach of trust is on the menu or the docket, they might have a much more favorable to HYBE employment contract. And so I guess that's what you get if you're making a deal to be the sacrificial lamb down the line. And that is one level of insulation, it looks like, that Min Hee-jin made so that she wouldn't directly, as much as possible, have her hands dirty in this case. But the door is open now to many other legal avenues. So HYBE's immediate response was that they are going to respect the court's ruling, and they're not going to terminate Min Hee-jin at the board meeting, which happened in the morning, on Friday morning. And so that's what they did. They kept their word. And they said that they plan to proceed to take the next steps within the bounds of the law, i.e., that's why them VPs are gone, okay? Gone by lunch. And they said that in the court decision, it said that it is clear that Min Hee-jin plotted to weaken HYBE's control over Ador by taking new jeans and pressuring HYBE to sell its Ador holdings, which would allow Min Hee-jin to independently control Ador. So the court definitely spotted, because they can't look that dumb, and especially if this thing turns on itself, that judge can't look that dumb. And so the judge essentially just kicked the can down the road and is leaving it for probably the main case, the main trial, to decide, because they ain't gonna decide everything and ask for the bill over the ranch dressing. So HYBE moves next morning, Friday morning, was that they fired the two henchmen of Min Hee-jin, and they appointed 3 new executives. So they are the Chief Human Resources Officer, the Chief Strategy officer and one other person that is on HYBE's team. And reports are also saying that it's going to be like a co-CEO structure at Ador now. That means HYBE is in total control of Ador, which was the complete opposite of what Ador wanted. And it does show that perhaps there is a safety rails mechanism in place under this multi-label system, because the multi-label system had gotten under a lot of heat over like, does it work or not? Well, obviously, in any environment, if you get somebody very predatorial like this, it's not going to work as designed, but it really does test whether you have anticipated and put safeguards for this kind of scenario, and it looks like it is working. So what this means is that she's going to be a lame duck CEO, that any decision that she wants to make is going to be blocked, and HYBE's people on the board of directors are essentially going to pilot the ship now at Ador. So this is what I would do. I would actually let her stay on the 16th floor. However, start charging rates for their contribution to the overall HYBE expenses as if it's like the Pentagon. Because under this multi-label management system, they have their own budgets, but they do have to pay a portion, to basically for the shared operating expenses. And I would immediately put a premium on the 16th floor, a penthouse, okay? And not only that, I would start making construction, okay? Loud construction that is expensive. Why? Because over the next years or months, depending on how long they want to drag this out, the worst case is 29 months from now, when Min Hee-jin's contract expires in November 2026. So she has an end date no matter what kind of shenanigans she can pull with the judges. So 29 months is the most amount of time that she would basically, if she wanted to stay at HYBE, she could, if her injunction holds until then. But if she's found criminal, then that would basically be canceled. But the reason why is that for her exit, she would still have, even if HYBE doesn't fire her and not pay the penalty, she can start asking HYBE to buy back her stock options and at a 13x multiple of profits. So she gets the 20% of the company, so basically it's 13 times the average profits of a year, and 20% of that. And so the average though is not just 1 year, it's averaged over 2 years. So, and that's profits. So if Ador if Ador has a lot of expenses, you just rack up all the expenses. How? Because you control the board, you can control all the decisions, you can start spending all this money, and then stop all economic activity, stop all revenue with Ador. Then basically that means she's going to see her profit plummet, maybe even go into the negative, which basically means then her stock options become extremely less valuable or almost worthless. If she stayed until the end, then definitely HYBE can hatch a plan for 24 months of all losses and she would have no recourse. But she could start selling, I believe, in this November. So most likely she's going to start asking for the money starting this November or December, because she's able to get some of the profit averages of the year 2024 and 2023. Also, I would turn a blind eye. Let's say like other people in the building, especially that creative director from B-Lift, the one with the lace gloves. I wouldn't mind if HYBE let her co-work on the 16th floor and other people co-work. I mean, let's see her try to get a judge to start deciding about like what office space she can have. So she basically opened up a whole Pandora's box, because there's so many things that HYBE could do now that'll make her life a living purgatory that is completely legal. So option one for HYBE is to just pay the $15 million, get her out of there, and then start paying off her stock options. Option 2 is to let her stay, and I think this would probably be the more economic way to go. Let her stay, and then let the investigations continue to unfold. Because when you really look at it, in the best case scenario for Min Hee-jin at this point is to just stay in HYBE, which becomes less and less valuable with each passing day. And so even if nothing gets proven, nothing is charged, and she's able to stay in her position, it's an empty shell for her CEO title. And then option 3, as I alluded to, just let her ride it all the way out 29 months if she wants to, and see what kind of mean girl stuff that they can come up with over in that building. Remember, I mean, a lot of people saying, like, a lot of critics are saying, like, oh, you're like so, like, you know, not balanced on, like, criticizing HYBE. Look, again, what is the legal question? This is about Min Hee-jin. It is not about HYBE. That is the question on the table. But the one kind of shady thing I would say about entertainment in general, entertainment companies in general, not HYBE per se, because I don't know these people, is that from what I've seen in the entertainment industry, even the victims of I remember I was working in one entertainment company, and these very powerful people were feeling bullied by other powerful people in the company, and the ones being bullied were kind of like bullies themselves. You know, they weren't all roses, but they had a limit. They had a line, and they were dealing with other people in the company, you know, who were way over the line. So I will acknowledge that, you know, even within HYBE, you know, even if they're the victims of Min Hee-jin's attacks, that doesn't automatically make them such soft Pollyannas. So she has to watch herself, because they can be just as nasty, because I've seen it. Not at HYBE, but other places. What's going to happen to New Jeans under this scenario? Well, definitely I would take umbrage with the way that HYBE's board of directors has already said that it's going to take about 1.5 years for them to find a Grammy-level producer to work with New Jeans, and that they would start going on a hiatus in the summer. Now, the parents of New Jeans were pretty smart to read between the lines and say, like, dang, you're going to basically now defunct our girls. They're not going to work for the next 1.5 years. And I would basically think that, yes, that is true, that HYBE would pull that. But I think this is what's actually going to happen, because actually New Jeans is a good revenue generator for the company. Now, with Ador completely in control by HYBE, I think they're going to give the New Jeans girls and their parents an ultimatum. And I think the ultimatum is going to be this: you can essentially be defunct and lose out on your window to be a top global K-pop girl group, or you can be reassigned to a different label within HYBE, or join a newly formed label within HYBE. And of course, that's completely legal, because HYBE and Ador have the right to adjust artist contracts. And I think they'll also sweeten the deal by giving the New Jeans girls probably some cash, or their parents, because let's see how loyal the parents and New Jeans are once the money stops rolling in, once the brand endorsements stop rolling in, once the performances stop rolling in, once everything else stops rolling in. Can they actually go into the studio and make their own music? Can they actually go into the studio and know how to work all of the juggernauts or whatever? This is the difference between BTS, because if the worst case scenario happened to BTS, they would be able to go and make their own music. But do you think these girls even know major versus minor key? And once it looks like Min Hee-jin is either kicked out of the company or a lame duck CEO, Korean people are very quick to read on the power situation. So if you lose your power, suddenly things disappear. support disappears, people's loyalties disappear in an instant. So let's see how Korean or not these parents and the New Jeans girls are, or just even looking out for their best interest. And I would also like to add in that the reason why I think that Min Hee-jin really wants to cling on to her position, even though everyone's saying like, doesn't make sense, if you don't like it there and you're saying you're mistreated, why would you go? There is extreme power advantage and her ability to call press conferences like this by saying that she's still the president and CEO of Ador, 대표님. If you suddenly put on the label 전 대표님, or like the former CEO, she just suddenly has less power. So it's almost as if, somebody marries into like the royal family and then wants to launch attacks against said royal family, but still use the title that the royal family gave them because it, gives them power. That's the kind of situation we're seeing ourselves in right now. So what was Min Hee-jin's immediate response? Well, of course, she organized a new press conference. We have to see like what kind of outfit and what kind of hysterics and what kind of histrionics, or is she gonna play it cool, or is she gonna do something different? Either way, I think it's going to look manipulative, because if she does more of the same, I don't think it looks that good. And then if she doesn't do the same, she's like, then who are you? You were a totally different person the last time. Also, what kind of red herrings is she going to put out? Most likely, she's been testing the waters right now with the whole chart manipulation drama. And I think that that's not going to really hold much water, because that's like a separate... If that ever turns into something that HYBE has to deal with through courts or whatever, then that's going to be a separate kind of issue that has nothing to do with her. And I don't think these music people that she supposedly works with is going to like... her exposing how the sausage is made. Not that I'm saying that this is how the sausage is made at HYBE, but I do have first-hand testimony from, let's just say, like a first-generation K-pop idol. And yeah, of course, this was back in the day where things were a lot more, greasing of the palms. And his dad bought tons of their CDs so that it could chart, and there's still boxes in the basement. So this is, in some format or another, these things have been going on, so it doesn't look good for Min Hee-jin to basically be accusing HYBE of doing something like this that most likely has been reformed a lot out of the system in K-pop. Now, Min Hee-jin's lawyers did issue a statement that was full of half-truths and their opinions and assumptions, but they made it sound, especially to bunnies like kind of still in, I don't know, grade school, high school, junior high, who knows, to make it sound like this is directly what the court says, but not at all. And so they said that this means the court ruled HYBE's reckless witch hunt through the media were not correct. That is a therefore that is not a therefore from the court. And it's completely not based on facts, honey. And they did say that, yes, the focal argument in this case is whether HYBE can disregard the contract. So see, they really focused on what mattered, which was the contract, and whether that HYBE can use its voting rights to get rid of Min Hee-jin and violate that contract, and whether HYBE had just cause to fire Min Hee-jin. But they said in their opinion part, they said HYBE has failed to prove that there was just cause for her dismissal, and the biggest reason, and this is the biggest reason why the injunction was granted. Again, that is not fact, honey. And then the biggest thing that they made, which was like a total half-truth, and yeah, see HYBE in court to see whether you're really right about saying that, oh, just because basically Min Hee-jin's lawyer said that there's no grounds for Min Hee-jin's termination, so there's no grounds for termination of the two Ador executives. And that is completely false, because the level of horribleness, or basically let's just keep it illegal, the level of infractions that the two executives can make to qualify for their firing is completely different than what Min Hee-jin negotiated in her contract. So what's going to happen? Well, now I think most of the power and the balls are in HYBE's court. At this point, Min Hee-jin can't really do much within the company, within the corporation. She can continue to appeal to the public, but more and more, it's looking like people aren't just buying her crocodile tears. And she's probably gonna start talking about, oh, protect the artist, protect the artist. Well, if you can entice the artist to go over to another label and then perform and continue, if new jeans continue, it's with a bonus. This is why I think they should probably save the $15 million, which basically $200억, on the early contract termination fee and just give it to the girls. Give it to the new jeans. Give them an extra 50억, or about for $4 million each, to then go to a different label, and then they're protecting the artists. HYBE now can start making these arguments, and there are fewer legal grounds for Min Hee-jin to start making shenanigans about, because there's no legal grounds for HYBE to fire the executives that were plotting to destroy Ador and HYBE, and there's no legal grounds to stop HYBE from replacing the board of directors. There are no legal grounds for HYBE to not exercise its 80% shareholder rights under that new structure as well. And so now we're going to see the limits, I think, of her impression management. And so she bought a lot of time with this very expensive injunction. This is the most expensive ranch salsa I've ever seen, honey, okay? And she wanted to put it on ice cream, and let's see her try to eat that with a straight face. I hope she got vanilla. Because now she's going to have to create some very specific legal arguments, basically what's on the exam for the judges, that the judges will feel good about ruling in her favor. And it seems as if, like, if she's gonna start going on the offensive like this in the court of law, it's really hard. It's really hard for her to be able to do that. Like, what is she going to actually do, saying that, you know, now it's like her, like, what kind of things is she going to bring up legally? Now she has to test whether she actually can work within the legal system and manipulate the legal system, which is going to be much, much, much harder than the court of public opinion, because there actually has to be a specific legal question that has applicable laws that actually make the judge look like, hey, they scored an A on the exam, that work in her favor. And right now, I think the options are extremely, extremely limited. Not only that, she's just going to lose momentum. Her hysterics are going to look even more hysterical and not like the noble Cinderella. She called herself, she had the nerve to call herself Pachi, which is the, Kongji, of course, you know, I think she's Pachi, which is the Korean version of Cinderella. So Kongji is the kind-hearted, warm girl who self-sacrifices, and Pachi is the evil stepsister in the whole Cinderella thing. And then she calls, first of all, a Kongji never calls herself a Kongji, okay? No Kongji really does that. And you know what's going to happen is that her lawyers are going to start leaving once she can't pay the legal bills. And I think suddenly her dead sister is going to suddenly leave her shaman's body. And now she's going to have nobody to cacao talk with. So what's going to happen? Wait and find out. Thanks, guys. So I'm going to post this as soon as I can, and then look at the press conference, and then give you my ideas and updates and analysis on the press conference. Jeez. What do you guys think? Put your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.